which is the best strategy, to refi or to sell, and it's going to depend. Here we've got two different landlords. One has to sell, one has options. I think with the one with the more options is going to work out a better deal for themselves in the long term, and they could definitely afford to refi this property and rinse and repeat and have the tenants pay down the mortgage again and build up their equity all over again. Hey, what's up all of my real estate peeps? This is Brian Lucier with another episode of the Why Not Real Estate Podcast Golden Nugget. We will take a tip, tactic, or technique and unpack it for you to be able to use in your tool belt to better improve your operations to be a more successful and profitable real estate professional and entrepreneur. Well, today's tip we're going to look at is to sell or refi your rental. Which is the right answer? Well, to quote a prestigious attorney friend of mine, it depends. So it depends on a lot of things. And we had a call with a client today who walked through the pros and cons of selling his property versus doing a cash out refi. And in this golden nugget, we want to do a side-by-side comparison to see where the true value was in pro cons of each, whether you're going to buy or sell, or do a cash out refi. So sell or a cash out refi. So the subject property, let's get down. We've got some details I want to share with you. I want to get this way so I can utilize the screen a little better. So the subject property is a duplex. The market price is $500,000. We're going to go with that for both examples, for the sale and for the refi. Now, the mortgage balance, the same for both, is $185,000. The current mortgage with his principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that's PITI, wrapped into the mortgage right now is $2,000. The equity he has in the property is $315,000. His gross rents, including the PTI and everything coming out of it, is $3,625. Those are his gross rents. So let's talk about if he sells the property. What does this look like? He's got a market price of $500,000. 6% commission to a realtor is going to be $30,000. So the net minus his mortgage, what he owes on it, the $185 plus the $30, he's going to have a net sale of $285. Now, on the $500,000, he's got to pay capital gains. We're just going to throw that number in there as well as $50,000. So his net sale minus the capital gains is going to be $235,000. So if he sells the property, $500,000, pays off his mortgage, his walk away is going to be $235,000. Not a bad payday. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's say he's going to go the refi route. Same numbers. He's got a market price value of $500,000. Because he's going to refi, he's got to leave 20% at least in the property, which $500,000, 20% is $100,000. So he can mortgage out potentially $400,000, but he has a mortgage value of $185,000. So his cash out on the refi is going to be $215,000. So on the sale, double check the numbers here. On the sale, he's going to have a net after capital gains and everything else of $235 if he sells. If he does a refi cash out, he's going to have $215. So there's a difference on $20,000 in favor of selling the property. But is that really the best deal? Let's take a look at this and find out. So first off, if he does the refi, he's going to have $215,000 cash that he is not going to have to pay capital gains on. You don't pay income taxes or capital gain taxes when you do a cash out refi. That's reusing the capital that you have. So let's look before and after. His monthly payment, PITI, before doing the refi is $20,000. That makes his current cash flow per month $1,625 and his annual cash flow of $19,500. And we're just going to stay there. We're not going to filter in repairs or anything else. So let's say he refis and he takes the $215,000 out. He's $20,000 short. So his new monthly mortgage payment, PITI, is going to be $3,060, which is going to hurt his cash flow a lot. He's still going to have the asset, but he's not going to have the cash flow. His cash flow now is going to drop to $565 a month. Now that's after PITI and all that stuff. This is a duplex, so we're not anticipating a lot of repairs, but you never know. So that's going to reduce his annual cash flow to $6,780. Okay, so his cash flow has dropped a lot. His monthly expense has risen a lot, almost $1,000, just over $1,000. But now he still retains the asset. So let's get back to the start. Which is the best deal? Well, it depends, because it's a really hard question to answer, because it all depends on the situation of each seller, and each individual seller is different. One may want to sell and just get out for whatever reason. One may want to refi and put the capital back to work. So if this particular client refis the property and he's only making $6,780 annual cash flow, it's going to take him 2.9 or 3 years of new cash flow to make up the difference from that 20 grand profit. So we've got, you get back in the middle here. So we've got a sale where you make an extra 20K, and then that's it, you're done. Or you do a refi and it takes you 3 years to make that 20K, and you're still in the game, you're still getting depreciation, you still have the asset. And eventually the tenants are going to pay this down again. And you can do rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. As long as it takes for you to get that equity back up, you still have the asset. So it'll take 3 years to get your cash flow back to make up to 20 grand. But what are you going to do with the proceeds, that $215,000? This particular client, they just had a baby. They want to have a cushion of $50,000K. So they didn't actually need to refi out the whole $215,000. We got a little deeper into the discussion about putting that capital back to work. So there's the question. What are you going to do with those proceeds? Are you reinvesting it? And if you're reinvesting it, what's your rate of return that you're going to make back on that investment? Now, if you filter that all in, that 20 grand starts to get a really small number. If you've taken the 215 and you're making more than 20 grand a year, then it might be a better argument to refi the property and hold the asset. So it depends. So what are you giving up if you sell the property? Well, if it's at $500,000, you can depreciate $500,000 over 27 and a half years, which is $18,180. 18,000. Is that right? Yeah, it's $18,181.81. It just happens to be 818181 all the way down. Let's call it 18,000. You're giving up annually on your taxes a depreciation of 18,000. Well, if you've made 20 grand on the sale, but you're giving up 18,000 on your taxes that you can take for depreciation, you're at a $2,000 window back and forth, but now the refi still has you up another almost $7,000 annually. So $25,000, is that your savings on taxes and cash flow in pocket if you do the refi? I think it is. So this investor also has another property. So if they sell, they're still in the game. It may make more sense for them to sell because they're still going to get massive tax breaks on the other property. They're still going to get depreciation, which is a larger property. That one's a 4-unit. They're going to get the tax savings and strategy from real estate because they still have a game or a piece on the game board. They still have an asset. So how do you prep this property? Here are some strategies for the sale or refi. Either one of these, either one, whether you're going to refi the property or sell the property, you want to get your raised rents as high to market value as property, because that is going to affect your sale of the property, because the savvy investor is going to look at the cash flow based on the rents. And if you're in a bank situation for a refi, they're going to look at what your rents are to evaluate the value of that property. So if you're going to refi, you want to have the leases term tenants. So you have time in the game here to prep the property for one strategy or the other. Let's say your strategy is refi. You want to rewrite all of your leases to be term tenants. You want these to be 1-year leases under a refi because you want to show the bank stability. Now, on the flip side, if you're going to sell the property, you want to be at a tenant at will. Why a tenant at will? Because you want to open the door for the market to a wider range, a wider spectrum of buyers. You may have investors on this duplex. You may have people who want to buy it as a first-time home buyer or to be as an owner-occupied. So as a tenant at will, I'm sad to say this, but you could approach one of the tenants if you're selling the property. If it's an investor, no problem, everybody stays put. But if you're going to do an owner-occupied where the owner wants to live in the property and everybody's on a tenant at will, now you could cherry pick the unit that the buyer wants to live in and negotiate a cash for keys situation or do a 30-day notice to quit, no fault. I mean, if I were selling the property and I knew I was going to do this, I would work with that tenant and possibly pay for their moving costs, get them a moving truck, maybe give them some stipend to pay their first, last, and security, where they're going, offer them back their last month's rent, security deposit. There's got to be something in it for the tenant if they're going to give up their tenancy, and actually you're going to win because you're selling the property and making the profit anyways. So I want to flip the coin here. This is one tenant I have that's got a couple of properties. It may make sense for them to sell because they still have another piece on the game board. They're going to be able to utilize all those tax savings and depreciation and all the expenses for a business that go with it. Now, we have another client in the same exact market, same situation, same type of building type, comparative rents, but there's one major difference. They're in a hard situation and they have to sell the property. So refinance is not an option to them. So they are going to give up on the depreciation and all the other tax breaks that they're going to get, and they're going to have to pay the capital gains tax, and it's going to be game over. They're no longer going to be a real estate investor. So the moral of the story is the worst time to sell a property is when you have to, because then you're stuck with fewer options. In this particular case, this landlord has 2 tenants in this property that are in term leases. We just found out after we leased up the last rental that they said, okay, now I want to sell. It's like, dude, you should have told us that before, because we would have written both of your leases as a tenant at will. So that particular landlord is now stuck in a situation. If they sell today, they're going to eliminate all of the owner-occupied because they cannot terminate these leases. The first one terminates at 6 months out from now. So they're stuck in a position where they would have to sell this property to only investors for the next 6 months. That's their window. And an investor is going to find out somehow, if they find out somehow that they're forced to sell or they have to sell, then that buyer is going to negotiate really hard, probably give them a low ball offer, and they may not even make that 20 grand if the buyer goes through it and wants this fixed or that fixed or that fixed. Because you need to do these things to make the bank happy, to make the appraiser for the bank happy, to just be able to sell the property. So if you have to sell the property, that's not the best market to be in. Their only other option is to wait 6 months, carry the property. If it's bleeding, it's bleeding, but carry the property for 6 more months and then rewrite the leases to be tenant at wills, and they'll be able to open up the market to a wider spectrum of buyers, not just investors, but owner-occupieds. So, wrapping it back up to the beginning, which is the best strategy, to refi or to sell? And it's going to depend. Here we've got two different landlords. One has to sell, one has options. I think with the one with the more options is going to work out a better deal for themselves in the long term, and they could definitely afford to refi this property and rinse and repeat and have the tenants pay down the mortgage again and build up their equity all over again. So there it is. Cash out refi or sell the property, and it's going to depend on you as the investor. If you've got to cut slack and run, you don't have many options. If you have more options, you can probably work a better deal, either refi or sale. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, all of my real estate peeps. This is Brian Lucier from the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, signing off with another golden nugget for you to help increase the operations of your real estate investing. And we hope this has helped you out. Brian Lucier signing off. We'll see you on the next one.